Hey there, and welcome to another awesome episode of From the Heart, the podcast where we are going to dig a little deeper and answer a couple of questions that we as South Africans have. In today's episode, we are going to be taking a look at men's mental health, the stigma surrounding it, try and uncover a couple of things that may be hidden under the surface and see if we can provide some tips and resources for men who might be struggling with mental health. So grab a cup of coffee, maybe tea if you want to. Let's dig into it and try and answer some questions from the heart. For today's episode, I have quite an awesome guest with me. Our guest by the name of Dr. Wade, I'm going to say your full name, Dr. Wade Luke Palmer, a 32-year-old general practitioner, health tech entrepreneur, and holistic wellness advocate based in South Africa. He co-founded a mobile and virtual primary healthcare service in 2020 to provide quality and easily accessible healthcare to all socio-economic groups. Dr. Palmer is passionate about finding creative solutions to accessing basic healthcare services and leveraging technology to bridge the gap between rural and urban healthcare provision. He hopes to establish, roll out and operate primary healthcare and wellness centers across South Africa and Africa, hopefully, to promote holistic community wellness. Wade, do I call you Wade? Do I call you Doctor? Do I call you GP?
No, so I think for this, call me Wade.
Wade.
It's let's keep it from the heart.
I love that. The fact that people are using this already. Thank you for being here, for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know that you're a busy man. And I messaged you recently because I got your number from someone who we both know. And I asked you to be a part of this because I think that this is such an important topic. So I'm going to start this off quite nicely in a way that I think will help set the tone for the rest of the podcast. But I'm going to ask you the question quite flippantly because it's a question that is asked quite flippantly. It's a question that's asked every single day and people don't really answer it in the best way. But how are you doing?
So before I answer that question, I'm going to pose a question to you.
Wow.
Are you ever really prepared for the answer to that question? No, right? And I think that's the important part, is that we ask that question to a lot of our friends and family members as if it doesn't bear a lot of baggage or weight.
Yeah.
But to answer your question, I this morning woke up with a lot of anxiety. Mondays are typically my anxiety days for the last year or so. And it's simply because it's a new week and there's a lot of uncertainty as to what's going to occur during this week. But as the day progresses, with things that I've implemented, the anxiety surely disappears.
Yeah.
So as I am now, I feel blessed and very glad to be here today and actually be with you discussing this crucial topic.
Cool. Thank you, man. That's a good answer. And I said it's a good answer because you could have given me anything. You could have said anything. But I think you posed the question to me, and it was one of my questions, which is, I'm asking this specifically and especially because people don't ask that question expecting that kind of answer. They ask that question because they just assume that you're going to say, I'm fine.
Yeah.
You know? And that's a problem because we kind of do need to understand how people are doing. We want to get a little bit deeper into what makes them tick. And if there are issues that we can maybe help them through. Now, there's the stigma at the moment, and this is the big part of what we're talking about today and the topic specifically. There's this stigma around men's mental health, and I want to try to understand, or if you can help me understand, help the people understand why there is a stigma at all. Like, how did this come about? Why is this such a taboo thing to discuss men's mental health?
So it's a difficult question to answer. So I don't think we'll probably unpack all of it in one session. And I definitely think that, look, this is my opinion and my view of it. And you'll have a lot of psychologists and psychiatrists have different opinions and theologies around it. But personally, when I look at society, it's a unfortunate result of society's norms, right, that has put pressures on men. And one of those is men don't cry. You know, these
Yeah.
typical myths. Men don't cry. We don't talk about what it is that we go through. And recently I came across this passage. I was reading this book, and it said, men and women alike both have masculinity as well as femininity. It's just that they predominate very differently.
Yeah.
But we both possess the capacity to release both our masculine side as well as our feminine side. And so if you look at generations over decades, you know, being passed down, my great-great-great-grandfather probably didn't speak about his emotions, and so my great-grandfather learned that, and then my great-great, you know,
Yeah.
so it gets passed down until someone says, we need to change this because it hasn't benefited us at all. And so the stigma just is sort of perpetuated until we decide that we need to change this, and then turn around and start
Yeah.
sort of addressing the issues as to why mental health in general, not even only associated with men, but mental health in general is sort of taboo. It was almost like, you know, speaking about homosexuality decades ago.
Yeah.
And that in itself is now, if you look at it, how far we are ahead. It's going to take time,
Yeah.
but it's necessary to start having those conversations and start destigmatizing it and start making it a norm, because unfortunately, we live in a generation where people are dying, young people are dying, and we're finding there's a saying by Dr. Les Brown. He's a motivational speaker, and he says the graveyard is the wealthiest planet on the earth, because there lies all the dreams, hopes, the unwritten songs, the inventions, the
Yeah.
cures that never came to life.
Yeah.
Right, and so this is part of that, is to actually start destigmatizing it, and
Yeah.
it starts with conversations like this.
Yeah. I'm excited at the fact that we're trying to do that. And I hope that whatever we talk about today is obviously going to help people. But how does this stress, right, that's so obvious in men today, how does it manifest? Like, you know that not everybody is okay. You know that. But how does it come about specifically?
So, look, there are commonalities, both between men and women, but I think irritability or externalization is what they refer to it as. Is externalization of distress is what men often portray.
Yeah.
So it would be irritability, having a short fuse, aggression, risky behavior, whether it be spending money, sexual behavior, drug abuse, alcoholism, and sometimes it's even as simple as not being able to focus or complete a task, which then has a indirect or direct impact on your ability to function at work,
Yeah.
which then impacts your ability to provide a salary, which then has an impact on your home life, and it eventually ends up in this vicious cycle. And so the externalization is often what men sort of portray in terms of the distress that they have. Then there's the simple things like low libido, difficulty sleeping, so either hypersomnia, where you sleep too much, or insomnia, inability to sleep. A lot of men tend to lose weight as opposed to stress eat, and it's usually unhealthy weight. You will see, people will say to you, man, you don't look well. And it's because your stress levels, your cortisol levels, if we're going very medical about it, your stress hormone in your body is starting to break down your protein stores, your muscle, essentially. And so this weight loss is not a healthy weight loss. You're still sitting there with that dad bod, but your muscle mass is sort of reduced. So those are the common sort of physical or manifestations of distress amongst men.
That's interesting, and it's like, it's weird that is the case, but it's so obvious to think about, to say, if that is happening and there are stresses, that physically it's going to show. Right? And like, I know for a fact that I've been tired. I've not looked my best. I've had the dark circles. I've whatever. And I always joke, because my mom will always be like, you don't look okay. and you laugh about it and you're like, just stop it now, you know, like, I'm fine.
Yeah.
But actually, I am tired. I am feeling something. I'm just not bothered about talking about it because who's going to listen, you know? So with all of this stuff that's manifesting and sitting there, we know that there's also another part of this that could come, because there's still a part of it called depression that might follow, because you'll have the initial feeling, and you'd think to yourself, like, am I doing enough? Am I okay? Am I going to be able to make ends meet? Am I, like, these things that we're worried about all the time, and then you get depressed, and depression comes afterwards. Like, are there things that men need to know about that could be triggers? Are there myths around depression? Or is there anything that you think ties into each other that we need to start talking about that helps us understand it?
So I think you touched on it in saying, when your mom makes mention to you and says, you don't look well.
Yeah.
That in itself is when your response is, actually, no, I'm fine. It's that, again, externalization. I need to reflect that I'm okay so that the world doesn't know what's going on inside of me. Because it's seen as weakness.
Yeah.
Right? To be vulnerable is seen as weakness.
Yeah.
And so I think for me, it's... Sorry. A lot of the stuff I end up speaking about is often things that... I say to myself, and it hits me occasionally as well. And so we as men, as someone who has lived with depression, and I say lived because it is not a death sentence.
Yeah.
There comes a time where you need to put down your bag of stuff before your bag of stuff breaks. So if you think about it, we as men, if we walk through life constantly taking our stuff and putting it in our bag, because the world tells us what we need to keep moving on, right?
Yeah.
Don't show emotion, don't show weakness, gotta keep moving. Eventually your bag fills up and it starts leaving breadcrumbs.
Yeah.
And so if you look at it, and women will often tell you, you bring your baggage and then you leave it in this relationship and it destroys and you move on. And that's with every relationship, whether it be romantic, whether it be friendship, irrespective of what the dynamic of the relationship is, you will leave a mess until you put down that heavy bag and actually take a breath and begin to feel what it is that is going on.
Yeah.
It's the only way you can sit and reflect and start looking at, this is unhealthy for me. I no longer need this. It doesn't serve me. We don't know how to look after ourselves first.
Yeah.
But we're so quick to look after everybody else. So we need to start learning how to drop our bag and take a breath and actually start analyzing what is actually going on. And it's the only way to really start sorting through your dirt, because some of these things actually hold value. You can recycle them. If you look at a bag of dirt, there could be a can in there that you could recycle and earn something from it. So there may be value in it by actually looking at it and not tossing everything away. So it's not a simple process. There are a lot of myths, and I think particularly within the communities for people of color. And one of them is that depression is a bougie illness, man. Or it's for white people. False. We come from a society or a community where we were subjected to historical oppression. We can push it back all the way to apartheid. You literally could. And it's traumas upon traumas upon traumas. If you look at it now, we live in societies where someone being murdered is like playing cricket in the street. That's how common it is. And our kids are seeing that. And we're expecting them to kind of be able to tolerate that and carry it and encapsulate it and then go through life.
And let's just deal with it.
100%. Yeah, let's just deal with it. Right? Sweep it under the rug and we keep... because there's nothing we can do about it. And that's the wrong way to go about it, because we're actually breeding a society or generations going ahead of brokenness, and we're not fixing it. And so to start saying that for us as people of color specifically, depression exists. It's not something that can just be swept under the rug. Anxiety is a real thing as well. And unfortunately, it is a conversation that needs to be had, and it's up to us as our generation to turn around and say to our parents or our grandparents or the elders within our family and say, we need to address these issues, because I don't want my son, my daughter to carry this burden. So the buck almost needs to stop with us. And so one of the others is that, and I laughed because in the Northwest where I worked previously, very rural community, and this young gentleman came to me and he said, the elders in his family said that's you're bewitched.
Okay.
If you suffer with depression.
Okay.
Right? So you have a lot of cultural influences as well. But if you deconstructed it, I forget the rugby player not too long ago that didn't report, I think, to the Blue Bulls.
Yes, he went missing or something.
And then turns out that he's struggling with depression. And so you look at it from the outside, and if your stress or your depression stems from financial insecurity, you would look at him and say, why are you stressed? You've got the world in the palm of your hands. But you don't know what that person's struggle is. It's not the same. You cannot use a single paintbrush and you paint everybody with the same brush. Our stresses are different. How we cope with those things are very different. So it's for us as a generation, again, I'll reiterate that, it's for us to turn around and actually say that we need to make the change now. Instead of, being a part of the problem, I'd say.
It's interesting because, like you were saying, people of color, men of color, we don't talk about this at all. Like, it's not a thing. And what my initial thought was when I had the idea to talk about men's mental health was, imagine I had someone like you in the studio, but also had one of my 60-odd-year-old uncles next to us, right? And asking that question, how are you really? And helping him actually answer it. Because I don't think that if I was to ask that question to any of my uncles or any of the elderly gentlemen that I know, they'd answer the question in the way that you were able to earlier. Because they just don't do that, they don't talk about that. And I think that we are lucky because we are living in a time that, like you're saying, the buck needs to stop with us, and we are smart enough to know that, so we will make that happen. It's going to take time, obviously, but we will make it happen. It's just very interesting to me because I'd love to get answers or to help them get answers, to break down how they are actually feeling. But now, that's difficult. It's not a simple thing. And like you're saying, it's going to take a little bit of time. But how do we go about starting that conversation to remove the stigma? Can we, is it possible? I assume it is, and I assume that it will happen and it will take time. But how do we go about starting that conversation to get the ball rolling?
So it's going to start with you. It's the Michael Jackson song of old, starting with a man in the mirror. Right. So last year, I had a terrible mental health year. But it forced me to sit down and really unpack everything. Try and understand where my traumas come from. Try and understand what contributes to my brokenness, what contributes to my ill mental health. Instagram was one of those things. I would sit for hours scrolling, and in the back of my mind, subconsciously, compare my life to other people. And as soon as I stopped it, my life was great. I literally only went on Instagram yesterday, again for the first time in like 6-7 months.
Wow.
Right, but it took me the time to actually sit and meditate. Right, and I looked up what does meditate mean, and it means to sit in silence, and to think or ponder deeply on something. But I thought about it and I was like, I think the greatest part of that meditation process is actually listening to what your soul needs as a person. What do you need?
Yeah.
Right? And so as soon as you can identify what it is that contributes to your brokenness or what has, then also look at what healing process needs to take place and how you invest in your own healing. And it's not for anybody else. It's for you. And so once you're able to do that and you are in a space or you possess the capacity to potentially help another man and be comfortable in your state of vulnerability, to be able to say, you know what, I can understand why what you are telling me is actually very difficult. We need to create those spaces. And there's a few corporates that I'm busy with currently, and my argument is that if I spend 60 to 70% of my day at my place of work, why is my place of work not my place of wellness? I spend 70% of my day here. Why must I deal with stress and only sit with stress here and not be able to deal with it? And now I have to sort of deal with it when I get home, right? So creating a safe space for men, and it starts with you and I. It starts with two people. I think any massive movement starts with one person. I don't think if you look at some an organization like Gift of the Givers, didn't start with 30,000 people employed all at once. Started with one man, had a vision, had a dream, had a goal. Same with the revolution, Malcolm X, Martin Luther King. It started with a few men, or a few people that had the same desire and had sort of outlook on life. And so it's the same. We can address it the same way with mental health, is to actually say, well, maybe we should go for hikes, a men's hike once a month, because we all have lives, right? And we won't always be able to make it like if it was every week. But let's set aside 1 weekend a month to we as men go out, go for a hike, spend time in nature, be rough and tough and feed the masculinity side. But let's get to the peak of wherever we are hiking to, and actually let's sit and have a conversation. You'd be so surprised how many men are struggling with the same issues and have the same outlook on life. And so just to create that sense of support for each other, and actually hold each other accountable, I think that's a massive part of it too, is the accountability. Because like I say, a lot of men externalize by doing something risky that either damages them directly or damages their family life or whatever the case may be. And so for us to sit and say, well, I'd like for you to hold me accountable. These are the things that I'm struggling with. Can you check in on me once a week? Because that's how frequent I need it. But it starts with, again, you need to sit with that man in the mirror and actually face it and be honest with yourself and say, these are the things I need to fix in my life.
I need to sit and actually say, you know what, there is a problem. And I need help.
Correct.
I love the hike idea. I remember, and I think we spoke about this a little bit earlier from a church perspective. Like we both part of the church and stuff, and I know that we did men's hikes. I mean, we did hikes as a whole, but the men kind of we made our own little thing, and we did men's hikes, and we tried to get it going so that we could do that. We could have those conversations. We could spend time together. We could ask questions. And we spoke about this just before we walked into the studio also, like how difficult it is to set time aside to get things done. People are busy. There's life that happens. For me, like I was telling you, like two of my closest friends, we all now have kids and we married, and just everything happens on the weekend, so you can't really take time out. But the first part is setting that time aside to say, you know what, this is important enough for us to make it happen, because it's something that needs to happen if we want to change something. So I'm excited for that to hopefully come about. But what I wanted to do is maybe find out from you, what have you done, or if you could tell us more about the experience that you've had, because I saw that you opened up something in 2020 and you're working your way to hopefully be able to open up a couple of more things in the future. If you can share a little bit about what you were doing.
Okay, so for me, I working in state healthcare, as every doctor in South Africa has to do for at least 3 years. I spent a lot of my time identifying issues more than anything else.
Yeah.
Right. So problems that I could potentially develop solutions for, and it's not something I can do by myself.
Yeah.
Right. It's going to take stakeholders from both state, private, maybe even international funding, whatever the case may be. But my objective is to find ways to decentralize basic healthcare services.
Okay.
So utilizing different spaces, so be it a church premises or a mosque premises, because during the week it's typically what they call a dead space.
Yeah.
And so to rezone that and utilize it as a wellness hub is the objective. So people have accessibility to mental health care, whether it be a counselor, a psychologist, because the idea is always to be preventative as opposed to being reactive, right? Which is where we're sitting now with our mental health. We see people die, then we want to react, and all of a sudden we're doing marches or we're doing a fundraiser of sorts. But why are we not investing in the prevention of why do we need to end up there?
Yeah.
So the idea is to build these facilities over the next 3 to 5 years, but at the same time find ways within corporate spaces to be an extension of wellness, because a job contributes to what? Your financial well-being.
Yeah.
Right? But it doesn't only have to be solely financial well-being, because you spend so much time there. But if you can't handle the stresses of life outside of the work environment, there's an impact on how you function at work, which then has an impact on the business.
Yeah.
So if we can create a space where your workplace is also a place of wellness, so whether it be a wellness clinic or a virtual care kind of setup, just improving and increasing accessibility to healthcare services while I'm at work to help me deal with outside stresses. Because for some people, being away from their home life or their community is actually sort of peaceful for them to be at work, because I run away from gang violence, I run away from the struggles that sit within those communities. So also using technology to be sort of the bridge between tangible healthcare or the brick and mortar infrastructure is something. Everybody has a smartphone.
Yes.
Right, and everybody has access to Instagram and Facebook, and so these are platforms that can be utilized to actually make use or access mental health care, as opposed to only contributing to sort of the negative side of mental health.
Yeah, which is it speaks a lot to today's world. Like you said, everybody has a smartphone, everybody has the ability. But with everybody having a smartphone, they also have the ability to see things and find negative things. And like you said, you sit on Instagram and you end up feeling bad about yourself just because, you're seeing this other world, which I think hopefully a lot of people understand is not the truth. There's a lot of fake things out there. But I'm excited to see where you go with it and how you bring technology into it specifically, because I think that will definitely be how things are going to be done. In the future. I wanted to before we end off, I wanted to get to a point that when we started talking, because we were put into contact by a mutual friend. Like when we started talking, I told you my reasoning for wanting to have this conversation.
Sure.
I have these weird ideas. I have these weird thoughts, and it's a strange thing for me because I come up with random ideas in my head, and I think to myself, like, am I the only one that's thinking this way? Am I the only one that's doing it this way? Am I doing it the right way? And what happened to me was, like I explained, I have a little baby boy. He is almost 2 years old, and for the first time we had to take him to creche. Had to drop him off, and it was what I thought was going to be the simplest thing ever, because you take him, you drop him off, you fetch him, and the day is done. And he goes and he learns and he does what he needs to do. I found myself in such a weird state that I had never seen before, because my wife jokes a lot about this with me being robotic. She says I don't have a lot of emotion, and it's just I hide my feelings, which is the truth, because I don't show too much, and I don't let people see how I'm actually feeling. And it could be part of this mask that we put up, that we say, I'm not gonna tell people that I'm feeling a certain way. But it happened to me where we dropped off our son, and I was busy taking him out of his car seat. And in that moment, it was about 30 seconds, I don't know, I took him and I held him, and I could not stop crying. Because in my mind, I had known that I was now letting him go. He's going to be on his own. Yes, he's going to have teachers. He's going to have friends. He's going to have whatever happens at creche happens. But I'm not there to make sure that he's okay.
Yeah.
How do I know that they're going to feed him if he's hungry? How do I know they're going to give him this water if he wants water? There's a lot of things going through my mind. And in that 30 seconds, I stood there and I held him. And there's a video of this, because my wife obviously recorded this, but there's a video of me standing and just bawling my eyes out. And I had a weird feeling, which is just, it doesn't happen. I don't do that. And it was funny because I openly cried in front of random people that I'd never met before, because it was our first day there, right? So these are parents that are dropping their kids off at school and stuff. And they're looking at me, and funnily enough, a couple of them said, "It's okay. It's going to be okay." And I stood there just thinking to myself, what am I doing? I dropped him anyway. We went about our day. It was hard. We fetched him the next day. We fetched him, and the next day we did the same thing, and there were still tears, right? But throughout that week of that trauma, I guess you want to put it, of me feeling that way, I was feeling, am I the only one that feels this way? That's the question I was asking myself. Do other guys do this? Do they cry? Do they feel a certain way when they dropping the kids off at school? I have a little boy, so am I showing emotion, and am I supposed to let him see me in this vulnerable state? There was just a whole bunch of feelings going on that I was feeling. And I spoke to you, I messaged you, and I spoke to you about this, and I said, it was just a weird thing for me. But what I was trying to bring across was, I don't think enough guys are saying that that's okay. They're not saying that I'm allowed to feel this way. I can be as tough and as macho and as whatever as people expect me to be. But when it comes to how I'm actually feeling, this is the truth. And the truth is, this is scary.
Yeah.
Right? And what's worrying for me is that I don't want my wife to think that I'm weak. But I also don't want her to think that I'm putting on a fake cry almost. I don't want her to think that I'm lying about the way that I'm feeling. There's just a whole bunch of emotion going on there. Yeah. And I don't know if you've ever dealt with something like this before.
Yeah, on a daily basis.
Really?
I watch a YouTube video and I cry, man. So we spoke about it earlier. Both men and women alike possess masculinity and femininity.
Yeah.
They just more prevalent in the different gender roles.
Yeah.
Right? I want to encourage you, actually. And this is a firm belief of mine, and psychologists will tell you, educational psychologists will also tell you. A kid or a child learns how to behave, how to love, how to do many things by observation of what goes on in their family and what goes on in their... Right? So we spoke about the new generation of men, where it's okay to cry because we too possess femininity.
Yeah.
We feel sad, we feel heartbroken, we feel all of these things, but we've never been provided the opportunity or the space to express it. And one of the biggest problems is that because we've never been given that opportunity, we don't do it.
Yeah.
And so now, like you're saying, it felt weird. But if you took it from my perspective, and I'm saying, cry because your kid is seeing my dad, one is my protector,
yeah,
and he cries, it's okay. So he eventually grows up to be that kind of man
Yeah.
who's okay with crying and expressing emotion. So most men do feel these things, is that we don't feel safe enough to express any of our emotions.
Yeah.
I, on a random basis, would cry either from work or to work
Mm.
for various reasons, whether it may be things that I dealt with patients during the course of the day, or a build-up of things going on in my life or my friends, families, whatever the case may be. Sometimes it's just a whole lot of sadness when I look at what's going on in our country,
Yeah.
right? And so having that experience or that moment is something that your son may never ever forget, and he may hold on to and realize that it's actually okay to cry. And so as much as you feel weird about it, I would encourage that you be real, particularly around your son, because it will raise him to be that certain way. Kids listen, and we were all there.
Mm.
Our parents would always say, don't do as I say,
Yeah.
or don't do as I do as I say, right? But we learned by what they did,
Yeah.
right? And so the same way, you go through life doing exactly what you're doing now, expressing how you feel. And there's really nothing wrong with any of it. And I guarantee you most men they feel the same way. It's just that they don't feel safe enough to express it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. I feel a little bit better about that moment. And it's just funny because, like I said, it's not a natural reaction. Or for all we know, it is a natural reaction. I've just been hiding it.
Yeah.
And I've been doing a good job of hiding it. So, I'm excited. Like, I think back to that moment, and like I get a little bit emotional because I remember holding him quite tightly and him not knowing what's happening, but he's just staring at me and he's hugging me. And I think back to that moment, and I think like it's such a powerful moment for me personally, that I've accepted what I was feeling. Openly in front of everybody, and it was a good feeling. Thank you, man. Thank you so much for trying to help us understand a little bit more about such an interesting but what seems to be taboo topic, like men's mental health. But I wanted to find out from you, what's next for Dr. Wade Parker, and how can people contact you should they need assistance? Is there any resources or tips that you have, like anything that you want to put out there for us quickly, please?
Sure. So either find me on LinkedIn, it's just Wade Parker, or on Instagram, Dr. Wade Parker, no spaces or hyphens, it's just all together.
Cool.
But in terms of resources, the ones that I make use of personally would be Mind Doc, DOC. So Mind Doc is one. And then Panda. It's a South African built app.
Yeah.
And it's got a panda bear on it, purple background. But they do a lot of sort of preventative things. So you could be at work, and on the registration of the app, you get to select the things that you are struggling with. And so by you selecting those things, you will get notifications when there's a talk done by a trained psychologist or social worker or a doctor that focuses on that specific topic that you may be struggling with. So you could actually be sitting at work and listening to the podcast. Well, it's actually a live interaction, and you could actually type your responses out as well and engage while you're doing work. So for me, that's something that's really impactful, because I'll jump in between patients, or if I've got a nice time slot, that I'll actually jump online and listen to that. So that's a really great initiative from a South African based company, if it's something that you'd like to tune into. In terms of what's next, man, I really hope to be at the forefront of changing wellness for our communities, particularly the communities that require it. So and whatever way that looks, wellness comes in multiple forms. It's not only physical health, mental health, but there's financial, spiritual component to it. And so I hope further along down the line, I get to work with corporates, government, local stakeholders within communities, to really look at bettering our communities and bringing a healthier community to light.
Have you ever thought of starting your own podcast?
I have. I don't know if I should say the name, but I told you briefly about it. But that is, again, it's focused on men's wellness.
Yeah.
And I do want to integrate some women into the conversation, because I think, as you and I mentioned previously, one of the biggest stumbling blocks when it comes to men expressing themselves is men not knowing how to express themselves adequately, so that the next person could actually understand what it is that you are actually feeling. So it's not enough to say, I'm sad. Okay, and then what else? What's causing the sadness? How do I facilitate? Is there anything I can do to help you? And so even for, like, you as a person who's married, to be able to communicate with your wife in a way that she would be able to understand you and actually be able to assist you, So I would like to run my own podcast. It's getting there slowly. So hopefully by the end of this year, we'd be able to launch it and really impact mental health for men across our country and maybe even the globe.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to talk about such an important topic. I'm excited for what's next to come for you. I'm excited, hopefully, for what's next to come around this topic. I hope that by us doing this and starting this conversation here, that we are able to help just even one person, because
100%.
That's what matters.
Yeah.
I think that this topic is not just for one episode. I think that this is something that can live on for many episodes. It's never going to stop, right? And I think that we'll be able to talk about this long into the night kind of thing. And hopefully we get the chance to do that. Hopefully, whether it's here, whether it's on your podcast, whether it's anywhere, really. I would love for this to have more light shed on it. So that we can help more people.
100%. Thank you for having me. It was really a great experience for me also.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the listeners, to the viewers, to anybody who's really interested in what we were talking about today. Thank you for watching, listening, subscribing, liking, commenting, whatever it might be. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us talk about an important topic. I'm excited for what's next to come for all of us. It's going to be exciting. Thank you. Don't forget to follow the Heart FM YouTube channel. If you need to, download the app as well, and you can listen to the podcast over there. My name is Gerard. I'm your host. I'm so glad to have been able to tell you what was very important and talk about something that we need to shed more light on from the heart. Cheers. Bye-bye.